That defeat of a federal voting rights measure in the Senate yesterday may have been the last attempt Congress will make to pass federal voting protections ahead of the midterm elections. That's what it looks like for sure, and it comes amid a flurry of state laws in Republican-controlled states that are designed to make voting, they say, more secure. It makes voting harder, too. So what does that mean for the midterms and the future of our democracy? We're joined by Daniel Weiner, who serves as the Deputy Director of the Brennan Center's Election Reform Program. That is a great group. Daniel, thanks for being with us. So first, can you help us understand some of these state changes that will be going into effect ahead of the midterms? Those laws that have been pushed by Republican-controlled legislatures in the name of election reform, election security. What's going to be different for voters in those states?
Sure. Well, there are a number of changes. So what we've seen is that in 19 states across the country, legislatures have made it harder for people to vote. A lot of the changes focus on mail voting, which was, of course, a target, even though in the aftermath of the 2020 election, even though it's been proven to be secure. Things like making it harder to cast your mail ballot, curtailing drop boxes, requiring more onerous forms of identification. Also, some states have rolled back things like same-day voter registration. That was repealed in Montana. And then I think one of the more disturbing trends is this sort of setting the grounds for takeovers of election administration. So in Georgia, for instance, this idea that partisans could come in, shove aside, professional local election officials and take control of the election administration process. And obviously that's very worrying. So all of those things, I think, could make the voting experience more difficult for many Americans in the next cycle. And then, of course, you also have a spate of gerrymandered congressional maps that are about to be enacted. With Texas, I think, leading the pack as often with a truly egregious gerrymander. So that's also going to change, if not how Americans vote, the weight that their votes are given and whether they're diluted.
Well, that is quite an array of laws. And I just want to pick up on something. You say it's going to make it harder to vote. For whom? Is it for everyone, or will these laws fall harder on specific localities, specific kinds of people? Who's going to find it harder to vote?
That's a great question, Terry. And unfortunately, what we see is that many of these restrictions disproportionately impact communities of color, and other communities, frankly, more onerous voter identification requirements, often disproportionately impact women who are more likely to change their names. So no, the impact is not equal. And I think when you're thinking about these restrictions, you have to always remember that just because something, is an easy hurdle for some Americans to overcome, it doesn't mean that's an easy hurdle for other Americans. And the disproportionate impact is really what we tend to focus on at the Brennan Center.
And, there are predictions of doom on the Democratic side and anticipations of a glorious victory right across the country on the Republican side because of these new laws. How do you anticipate the impact on the elections? Are the Democrats right? How many states and localities are going to be, well, you've already talked about that a little bit, but do you think this will be decisive, these laws, in outcomes in elections?
Look, a couple things. First of all, I want everybody to be able to cast their ballot easily and securely. This is not about giving either side a partisan advantage. I do think, unfortunately, the hope behind some of these laws, whether it is the effect or not, is to give one side a partisan advantage. But why we should be dealing with this is because every American deserves the right to cast their ballot. I also want to be very clear. The Freedom to Vote Act is very much still in the mix, and we are optimistic that Congress still will act. I think the White House press secretary said it very well, in the wake of what happened yesterday. Congress needs to find a path forward to get this done. And one thing I would just gently disagree with your last guest is voting restrictions cannot be out organized. They cannot be, these are not things where you can just sort of educate the public and get around them. In order for all Americans to vote, and particularly Americans of color, we need to pass this federal legislation. And I think that honestly has to be the priority.
And right now it is held up. So if Congress doesn't act, the Senate certainly hasn't. Are there legal options? I know the Voting Rights Act has been looked at by the Supreme Court twice now, and according to many, gutted the effort by the federal government to make sure voting is safe and secure for all. But are there legal avenues available to those people who feel these laws are falling inequitably on people?
Well, look, voting rights advocates have been fighting these fights for decades, and they're going to continue to fight these fights. And they will continue, to bring actions under the Voting Rights Act, and then we'll continue to try to correct injustice where they see it. But I really cannot stress, you need to expand the number of tools that they have. And I do really want to emphasize that, Congress takes this seriously. I think the statements from the White House indicate that they take this seriously. So there are certainly tools that are available, and those tools will be used. But we absolutely need to get this legislation over the finish line. And I think that's not to ensure that one side or the other will win the next election. That's to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to vote, and also that the integrity of our electoral process and the results of elections are honored.
All right. Daniel Weiner, thank you very much for that insight on this crucial subject. Thanks very much.
It was a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.